All rise.
I want viewers watching my show to believe in themselves.
Judge Hatchett is compelling.
I was not the first one to throw a walk.
Let me just tell you what you just said.
Compassionate.
I really enjoy being a judge. Now I am touching people who I will never know I touched.
She's powerful.
You should have never let them walk out of your life when she was 3.
And she's on the bench.
Don't get me preaching up in here today.
Right.
You're watching The Verdict with Judge Hatchett. Ron Donaldson is suing Leonard Duvall in the amount of $2,000. Mr. Donaldson claims he won a radio station prize that Mr. Duvall sponsored, but says the defendant failed to honor the prize. Mr. Duvall claims the prize was voided when the station went out of business and says the station should have forwarded the proper documentation to the plaintiff.
Mr. Donaldson, you are suing Mr. Duvall because you say that they reneged on a radio contest prize. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
So tell me the details about this. What happened?
Well, Your Honor, I've been a loyal listener of the show Rise with Ron, and kind of built my entire day around the show, used it as when I was working out, and they happened to be holding a contest one day on the radio show that the winner of which would get an all-expense-paid trip to Las Vegas. Now, on top of that Las Vegas trip, Your Honor, my favorite band was also going to be performing, and they were going to be picking up the bill on that. So naturally, I set it as my goal to win this contest.
What did you have to do to win the contest?
Well, the stipulations were as such. There was a designated call-in time where you would have to answer 3 trivia questions about the state of California. And if you successfully did that, your name would be placed into a raffle, the winners of which would be announced the following week.
Okay.
They would announce your name, and then once you called in, they would subsequently say, you're the winner, and you get your itinerary.
So it sounds like a lot of listening. A commitment to a lot of listening.
Oh, Your Honor.
And did you have to listen to the station throughout the day or just during that particular show hours? The show hours.
Oh, it was actually throughout all of their shows. So this particular show was a morning drive show, but I was listening to it on my way into work, during my breaks, even listening to it during work. A few coworkers even looked at me like I was odd, but I was determined to make sure that I won.
So you were just really on this. And so for what period of time were you just focused and listening on the way to work, doing work, breaks, no breaks,
6
after
days.
work? For 6 days?
6 days, yeah. And on days 1 through 5, I kept trying to call in, wasn't picked. Finally, on day 6, which was the last day of the contest, sure enough, I got through. They asked me the 3 trivia questions.
And you answered all 3?
All 3 of them. I can recite them for you right now if you'd like. But
tell me what they were.
Well, the first one was, when was the state of California founded? That would be in 1850. The second one is, what is the state flower? That would be the California poppy. And then the third one was, what is the largest city in the state? And that is Los Angeles.
All right.
So I was on top of things.
Clearly. All right, so now you win, and then you go into a lottery. Is that right?
Yes, a raffle, correct.
Okay, so a raffle. And so then you had to listen, I'm assuming, for your name to be pulled. Mm-hmm. So now you've got to listen. You've listened for these 6 days trying to get in. Mm-hmm. And now you've got to listen for how many more days?
So this would start on the 15th of the following week, and they would only operate it from 7 a.m. to 7:20 in the morning. So you only had a 20-minute window, but it went on for the entire week.
Okay, but at least now we're not having to listen all day.
It wasn't quite as stringent.
Okay, so, all right. So now what happens in the second phase? You get picked?
So at 7:20, they called my name in. I sprinted, ran and grabbed my phone. Couldn't believe it was actually happening. Got on the phone with the host himself. We were on the air, and he announces to me that you're the winner.
Wow.
I was pretty ecstatic.
I bet you were.
Yes.
So you're going to Vegas, and you're going to see your favorite band. I mean, it seems like things are all lined up. Mm-hmm. So why is it necessary for you to be in here suing today?
Well, I wish we didn't have to be here today, Your Honor, but what ended up happening was they took down my contact details off air after we got all that taken care of, and then they said to reach out to a particular number to finalize the itinerary.
Right.
When I called, the phone number was disconnected, the website was down for maintenance, apparently, and when I actually tuned into the station itself, there was elevator music playing. I finally, after all this confusion, managed to get in touch with somebody via email at the station who had told me that they weren't around anymore. And that in order
what do you mean they weren't around anymore?
Poof, they were gone.
So, I mean, you go through all this for all these days, and now the station is just You're trying to claim your prize, and there's no more radio station?
No more radio station.
They're
just
off the air.
Elevator music. Now, one of the, I guess, former employees told me to reach out to a particular number, the sponsor who was taking care of this, and said...
Okay, so that's how Mr. Duvall gets in the picture.
That is correct,
All
yes.
right, Mr. Duvall, tell me your role in this situation and what you know about it, please.
Well, when my travel agency is the one who sponsors the contest.
Okay.
Okay. When I signed an agreement with the radio station, it was an agreement contingent on the amount of listeners.
Okay.
The increased amount of listeners would bring in more revenue, which would pay for the trip and the concert. Since the radio station has been on hard times for some time, has not paid their bills. So they canceled the show on Mr. Donaldson. I have no obligation to pay Mr. Donaldson a free prize when the show has been canceled.
Coming up on The Verdict with Judge Hatchett.
So after being misdirected, I went ahead and I, called in, and he starts talking to me about discounts.
And later,
he just spoke to my son in a very rude manner, startling him and causing him to yell. And before I could even get to him, Your Honor, he fell.
you're watching The Verdict with Judge Hatchett. The Verdict with Judge Hatchett is back with the case of Ron Donaldson, who is suing Leonard Duvall for breach of contract.
Wasn't the prize already designated and in place before that happened?
Yes. It's contingent on the amount of listeners for the entire year. So once the listeners have increased and then the revenue is brought up, the contract specifies that all prizes are subject to cancellation.
It does? Where does it say that? Does it say that to the listeners?
In my contract with the radio station, Mr. Donaldson has a contract with the radio station. Mr. Donaldson does not have a contract with me.
Yeah, good point. So, Mr. Donaldson, did they ever give you anything in writing, send you any email, do anything?
Yes, Your Honor. So basically, what they had sent me was a document after I had provided them with all my personal information. I was ready to go. Said, if any case the radio station or Rise with Ron is unable to fulfill the prize outlined above, which has the details, the sponsor, that being Mr. Duvall's travel agency, can be reached at the following number and extension, and arrangements can be made to claim the prize. So after being misdirected, I went ahead and I called in, and he starts talking to me about discounts. I'm not looking for a discount. I mean, the trip
You're
itself...
looking for a free trip.
For the trip that I deserve.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I get it. You
Third
won the
paragraph.
prize, and now you're trying to collect on the prize. Oh, this is horrible.
Isn't it?
Thank you. Well, the problem is that the language says that you can contact the sponsor and arrangements can be made to claim this prize. But if the radio station hasn't fulfilled its obligations to the sponsor, I don't know how as hard as this is to tell you, Mr. Donaldson, I don't know how we can hold the sponsor responsible.
I did receive a call from Mr. Donaldson, and I was very apologetic. I understand his plight. But again, it stipulates that all prices are canceled, depending on the amount of listeners.
Let me tell you, this is what I think happened. I think that they were running this contest to get people to do exactly what you did and to listen. And it's horrible. But your claim really isn't against the travel agency. Your claim is really against the radio station for not complying with what they should have done to fulfill their end of the deal, because they were the ones who advertised this prize. They were the ones who told you that the prize was won. They were the ones who got your information and should have fulfilled it. It is very unlikely that you can reclaim anything from the radio station. They probably have gone bankrupt, but you can file a claim in their bankruptcy case if, in fact, they have filed bankruptcy. I think that you would be wasting your time and your money to try to sue them, but if you can round up a defendant from the radio station and you think that they're solvent enough, you come back in this courtroom and I promise you that I will nail those guys. But right now, we got the wrong defendant, Mr. Donaldson, and I'm so sorry. If you can find somebody from the radio station, bring them in here, and we will deal with this straight up. If nothing further, unfortunately, your case is dismissed.
Judge Hatchett has ruled in favor of the defendant. The plaintiff's case has been dismissed.
Well, I'm really happy with the verdict, and I'm truly sorry you didn't get to go on your trip, Mr. Donaldson.
Even though I won the radio contest, I probably shouldn't have taken you to court. Take care.
Coming up.
He just spoke to my son in a very rude manner, startling him and causing him to yell. And before I could even get to him, Your Honor, he fell.
You're watching The Verdict with Judge Hatchett. Monica Brennan is suing Mitchell Drake in the amount of $570. Ms. Brennan claims her co-worker, Mr. Drake, disciplined her child without her consent, which led to her son being injured. Mr. Drake claims the accident would have never happened if Ms. Brennan had disciplined her child. But since she didn't, he had to do it himself and doesn't owe the plaintiff anything.
Ms. Brennan, you and Mr. Drake are co-workers, but clearly there's a problem.
Yes.
You're suing him today. Tell me what happened.
Yes, Your Honor. I am suing Mr. Mitchell in the amount of $570 in medical expenses for my 4-year-old son, who he forcefully caused to fall in the restaurant, bruising his forehead as well as scratches.
Okay, bruising his forehead as well as scratches. When you said he forcibly caused injuries to your child, I immediately had visions of him striking the child?
No, Your Honor, he didn't strike my son, but he was putting his fingers in his face and causing my son to be very, very startled, and he was also crying. He was yelling, and he was very, very, very emotional, and I knew that something had to be done at that point.
Okay, so how were you all in the restaurant to begin with?
We've been working together in the radio sales for about 5.5 years, and he's been my mentor. He's done great. We're top producers in the industry. The situation at hand is our boss, he'll have conventions, but you have to, provide a certain percentage in order to qualify.
So both of you all are there?
Yes.
How is it that your 4-year-old son is at a business convention?
Well, we were actually at a dinner. So the first meeting took place at a restaurant, very high-end, very fancy, and we were able to go to attend so we could bring our family members. I brought my husband as well as my 4-year-old.
Okay, so now, Mr. Drake, you are on a business trip, a business convention.
That is correct.
And you were obviously at the restaurant as well.
Yes.
From your perspective, what happened?
She was right. We were at a business dinner.
Right.
Everyone was welcome. It was the staff, the managers, and the families. That's why we had our families there.
Right.
She showed up with her husband and her 4-year-old son, and I was with my wife and my 6-year-old daughter.
Right.
The reason why she claims that I disciplined her child is because during our dinner, I was eating my $60 steak, trying to, and her son picks up his spoon and fork and starts banging the table right behind my ear.
The table, he's at his table.
Yes, it's 2 booths.
2 booths.
It's a booth, and so their booth, they're right next to us, and her son is behind me. And I'm eating my dinner.
So is he banging on the table or is he banging on the booth?
He's banging on the headset of the booth right directly behind my head.
That's different from being on the table.
It was an incredibly loud noise. At this point, I'm letting it go on for about 30 seconds. I noticed that her husband's nowhere around to tell her son to stop, and then she's on her cell phone at this time. And so I go up to her, I tell her, please, can you tell your son, stop banging on the table, on the booth. I'm trying to eat my dinner. She says it's okay. He's an inspiring drummer. And then that's when I had it. I said, listen, stop it. He stopped. I think he got a little taken aback. And what happens next, Your Honor, he falls down and they take him away.
Coming up.
He just spoke to my son in a very rude manner, startling him and causing him to yell, and before I could even get to him, Your Honor, he fell.
You're watching The Verdict with Judge Hatchett. The Verdict with Judge Hatchett is back with the case of Monica Brennan, who is suing Mitchell Drake for medical expenses.
Was your son banging with fork, a spoon, whatever, at the top of the booth that he's sitting on the other side of?
Your Honor, he was utilizing spoons as an instrument, drumming. I do believe he will be an inspiring drummer. I let him express himself in that manner.
There's one thing of letting your child express his creativity at your dinner table, where you and your husband, well, we're out in public, and you're going to tell me that you let him express this because you believe at 4 years old he's going to be a drummer?
I do understand, Your Honor, but at the same time, the noise wasn't that loud either.
Oh, no, listen, you're talking to a mother. That is annoying. Did he ask you to have your son stop?
Your Honor, he did not ask me. He just spoke to my son in a very rude manner.
So
he yelled at him, startling him, and causing him to yell. And before I could even get to him, Your Honor, he fell.
Were you on your cell phone?
I was not on my cell phone, Your Honor.
Were you distracted?
I was there looking at the menu, Your Honor.
Where was your husband?
My husband went to the restroom, Your Honor.
So you were there, and your son is, as you say, expressing his creative...
musical creativity, Your Honor.
Musical creativity in a public restaurant where people are seated and trying to have dinner. And you are going to have the nerve to come into my courtroom and sue this man for having said something to your son when you didn't say anything to him.
Your Honor, if he didn't yell at him, he wouldn't have gotten startled, Your Honor.
Judge Hatchett's verdict when we return. You're watching The Verdict with Judge Hatchett.
Ms. Brennan, you didn't exercise enough parental control over your son in that restaurant. It should have never been up to Mr. Drake. It's unfortunate that your son was startled and he fell backwards and you took him to the hospital, as I would have done. And I think that you had the option of what you wanted the test to be there. But thankfully, he was not injured. I mean, not seriously injured. Might have been frightened and lost his balance. He fell, may have been scraped up a little bit. But to come in this courtroom and sue Mr. Drake for $570, expecting that I am going to award you that money based on this set of facts, is outrageous. There's nothing further. I am denying your claim for $570, so ordered.
Judge Hatchett has ruled in favor of the defendant. The plaintiff's claim has been denied.
I'm sorry my son disrupted your dinner. I should have paid more closer attention.
I didn't mean to scare your son, but when you didn't do anything about it, I had to step in.
This has been a production